Well, good morning, everyone. I'm super excited to be hosting this second Customer Spotlight webinar for Boomerang, and excited to have Nalin as our guest today. Nalin's the CEO of Storylane, and we're expecting to have a fantastic conversation from here. But before I do that, I do want to kind of take a moment to give a massive shout out to both our teams for the amazing collaboration that's going on. And thank you, folks. And welcome, Nalin. Welcome to the show.
Absolutely. Thank you. Great to be here and share some of the things that we're doing with you guys. Yeah.
Absolutely. Nalin, maybe again, like I had mentioned before the event, right? I think we are having a uh, lot of customers and a lot of participants who are actually joining us today, who are in the early phases of early stage companies, looking to look best practices of champion tracking and especially Boomerang. So the question, maybe before we get into the details, would love to kind of get started with a quick introduction about you and Storylane, and then we can take it from there.
For sure. Yeah, definitely. I'm Nalin, founder, CEO of Storylane. So Storylane is a product demo platform. We started 3 years back. So end of this year will be our third year. And it's been like a fantastic journey for us. And then it's been 3 years, as I said, like we went through YC and then raised a small round around like 1.5 million. And then been having a team of around 35 people growing. And then we are remote throughout the US, India, and Europe, distributed across. We've been growing. So as a demo platform, we sell into marketing teams and sales teams who use Storylane to build out product demos of their product to showcase to their buyers, to educate them. And that's what we do. And then our vision is to make sure like the whole buying journey is simplified and it's frictionless, which is how we started with it. And a lot of GTM teams take advantage of this today. And that's what we do at Storylane. We have like close to 2,000 customers today. And so personally, my background, I'm a tech person. When I say it's like the deep tech. So my background is a little bit on computer vision, machine learning. That's how I started my career, did my grad school and all. This is kind of my third company fully in startups for the last 10 years. I've been very deep tech. I've done like augmented reality for 5-6 years, very early in the time. Then I did a SaaS for early education market, then Storylane now. Yeah.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful, Nalin. So I think again, when we spoke, again almost a year ago, right? When we first spoke, would love to understand like what was the thought process on your mind in terms of champion tracking, and obviously at this early stage of the company in terms of growth, right? Like what was on your mind, and how did you fit this in?
When I spoke to you guys, right? So we kind of moved also from our product offering more into a PLG model. So we didn't like the first year we didn't have a PLG part of it, and we always know as a company we will be a PLG product. When I say PLG, it's product led product, right?
Yes.
In the sense like people can sign up, try it out, right? So a year later after we launched Storylane, so we built out a version of product led side of it, and we move forward. At that point, you get a lot of sign-ups, people sign up, trying out the product and everything, and we started getting these customers as well quickly. So the volume starts growing up, and you talk to a lot of them. So the reason why we started engaging with you guys is like we always feel like there is like multiple channels that will work, right? How you get the leads. So it's like the inbound part, which is like for us it works great, and then people who are our champions, who have been our customers. How do we utilize these people, and when the volume is higher for us? So because we get a lot of inbound through word of mouth or referral or people sharing the demos, and we rated very high in G2 also, people like it. So now there's got to be a better way to track these people when they change jobs, so we can continue to leverage that. So I was looking around for the solution. So basically, so in a simple way where we have a soft touch and high touch. I'll talk more about how we do it.
Sure.
But that was the premise for why we said like, hey, let's find something which is important for us to track these people as they progress.
Got it. And I think, yeah, no, that totally makes sense. I think, again, you also, like you mentioned, PLG, motion, right? So I think that also has a bearing on, probably why this is even more relevant in your world. I know that your customers, like you said, love your products. So obviously that when they move around, that's like a fantastic signal for you, right? So talk to us about how this kind of comes together in your world, the PLG strategy as well as, champion tracking.
Yes. So the way it works today, I'll tell you a little bit of like how we do it today, and then I think also it's different for every product, every use case, right? So
Yeah.
this is how we operate on this. So we have around 2,000 customers, and a lot of them are peer product led, which means like we don't even talk to them. They try the product, they subscribe to us, right?
Got
And
it.
then they upsell and upgrade to them. And of course, some of them talk to us directly and go into a different pricing tiers, different needs they have, right? So there is two sets of customers we acquire them. Now, anybody who uses our product and they can collaborate, they can invite these people and who's on our platform. We basically we work with them either through a CS person or their self-serve. So when they change the jobs, basically, like we have an integration with Boomerang, so
Yeah.
that we identify like all the people who are our users and who change the jobs. We are able to identify those kind of users.
Yeah.
And once we know month over month or with some cadence, so we do this over like a monthly cadence. And then when it's a
Hmm.
change job, we get to think of it like a signal, right? Once you get a signal, then we need to figure out how to act on those signals. So each month we get those kind of set of signals, and based on those signals, we act on it. So there are a couple of ways to act on it. It doesn't mean like somebody changes job, they're going to buy the product right away.
Yeah.
Firstly, I mean that's my philosophy on it. Like when they change job, it's a good signal for you, and they have used Storylane. So our goal is to do like a couple of touch points around them, being a very soft touch. When I say soft touch, what it means is if you're already not connected with them on LinkedIn or anything like that, we try to set up those kind of connections to be in that circle of people, right? So
Got
that
it.
they remember us top of the mind when they need the product. So there is a soft touch we do. Then there is a little bit like a couple of months later, we start looking for other signals from that organization and then
Got
try
it.
to do email, reach outs, and everything. So that's how we do it today. And it's even relevant because of PLG, because the volume gets higher. So what we do is only people who use the product. But there are people, I mean, when I say use the product, not free users, but who are only paid users. There is a lot of opportunity for us to tap into people who have been free, bigger accounts, but they just didn't buy it, or people who are in our pipeline. Something that we will start taking it up more and more. But I think we are focused a lot on our existing user base today. That's what we do today.
Understood. Understood.
Yeah.
Understood. Makes sense. And when you think about the I think you spoke about PLG, and in the context of PLG also, right? I think, how does your org look today? Like for a company that has 2,000 customers, I think your org, the team is going
Yeah.
to be slightly different, right? So and not just org, I think also your tech stack, right? I think is going to be slightly different. So can you walk us through the
Hmm.
tech stack you have, and how do you kind of connect these things together in the context of Boomerang deployments?
Sure. So we are HubSpot. So on a CRM side and everything. So
Yeah.
we write everything on HubSpot, and then we use Intercom. Intercom is our like conversations with the customers that happens, be it email, chat, support. A lot of them happens through Intercom. And then there are outbound that we do through Apollo, Smartlead, few other things that the sales team uses and as well.
Got it.
So at a high level, that's the tech stack that we touch quite a lot, right? And then where Boomerang fits in for us is like, hey, we have users in Intercom. So we identify the users from Intercom and then enrich them through Boomerang when they change the jobs and
Got it.
update them in our HubSpot stack. So in HubSpot, we will know, hey, these are our customers and they have changed the jobs inside our HubSpot itself quickly. So once the signal gets updated, like a monthly, let's say with the cadence, so we know there's a field there that gets updated. We set up those automations and everything. And
Mhm.
now we have two touch points now there, right? Automatically connecting them to the LinkedIn. We use some tools like Phantom Buzz and other things that sets up through the HubSpot, pulling the data and set up a LinkedIn automation. So so there are two things that will happen, right? So one is like I personally connect with everybody who changes jobs today. So
Okay.
that is something that I do because it's important to be there and saying that as a CEO, founder, I care about the product and I try to connect with you guys and get some feedback. Right? First is a very simple connection. I do that, understand. And to me, that is like the best way to get feedback also. Right.
Makes
And they
sense.
liked it, they didn't like it in the job and all. So that's one thing we do. The second is we also have a salesperson who do the same thing, but slightly more a salesy approach to that. But rather mine is more like a feedback approach. So that's what I
Okay.
talk about a soft touch, just to be on top of their mind. And the second is more a salesy approach. So we do that, and then this will help me understand the product feedback, how they've used as well. So going back to your question, tech stack, this is our tech stack. We connect through them. And emails are sent out very simple through a HubSpot sequence or even an Apollo without like overcomplicating it. We just made it very simple. They're simple
Yeah.
email sequences. And we have to remember that these are people who have used Toodlet. We don't want to be doing like an outbound kind of a sequence, right? We want to be there in front of them. They're already like our product and then be very as soft as possible is good, because you don't want to finally like piss off that customer who's actually been
Yeah.
liking your product, right? It's very important to keep the balance there. So that's why I talked about LinkedIn connection plus a very couple of email sequences we send out. Again, we use HubSpot and Apollo for that sequencing itself.
Got it. And just to make sure that anybody who is joining us more recently, I know there are a bunch of people that joined us, right? So we're talking about specifically the fact that you are looking at users of the product and past users of the product, and this is mostly the whole low touch, or rather, the feedback kind of an approach is largely a focus of approach for past users, because you don't want to piss them off because they just they're happy users, they move to a new job, and this is a more of a nurturing kind of
Yep.
a way of doing this, right? And I guess for the buyers, which is obviously the folks that come out of your CRM, or yeah, in this case CRM, right? So I think that's the people where you have a little more salesy kind of approach, I assume, like a little more structured sequences, and yeah.
Correct. So I think a good point. So I think there are like a couple of things we're doing also, right? One is like people who are our users, I mentioned, right? And then there are also, we started tracking people who are in our pipeline. So which, when I say pipeline, hey, I couldn't purchase today because of budget, like they're qualified, but just didn't become a customer yet. There's an opportunity to touch them. And during the process also, they would have changed the jobs, right? So they've already evaluated student wherever they are. So that again is another place where you need to jump in and not be too, again, we don't make it too salesy at this point unless we have some criteria to meet, right? So they've been there for 3 months in the new job, 4 months. Someone who changed job is not thinking for first thing to buy a tool, right? They want
Yeah.
to make sure like they're comfortable in the job. Next thing is you want to enable them as a champion now, right? When they go into the job. What that means is like they need to be successful in the new job. That means whatever tool they're procuring and purchasing, they need to make sure like it works for them, for the organization, so they get the right accolades from their bosses, right? So
Yeah.
our goal is to make sure we are helping them be there in the first 3 months. And come third month is basically where we become like a little bit salesy. They've shown interest and tried to like, hey, we talked about it, become a little salesy, means like trying to push some of the features and products that we've improved.
Makes sense. And you also mentioned, and this is something we spoke when we met, right? So you have this
Hmm.
automation where you have this LinkedIn. I know you obviously, you said personally connect with people, but also I think there's a
Yes.
HubSpot to LinkedIn kind of automation you have kind of put together using some tools. Can you talk a bit more about that as well?
So what? Well, yes. What we have done is like we use a tool like Phantom Buster. So basically,
Okay.
like we pull the data and then automatically connect to LinkedIn, and that's what we do. And then once the LinkedIn connection is accepted, so when I connect with them, these people who have changed jobs, more than 50% of the people accept the connection because they've
Yeah.
used the tools, right? So then we just send us, hey, thanks for using Storylane. Kind of like congrats on your new place wherever you are, right? That's it.
Yeah.
And then that's what we do. These are somewhat automated and through the tool. And then what a salesperson does is like kind of uses Apollo to connect with LinkedIn plus send an email, like multi-touches there. So again, we take two-part approaches for us. Like we also have a PLG customers, which means there are a lot of startups also come in, a lot of big companies come in as well. So there's a mix there.
Yeah.
So there, again, there's a two-part. It depends on your product, your strategy, your pricing that you're offering, and everything, right? At the end of the day, you don't want to go overboard to a smaller company and they're purchasing at a low price point. You want to spend your energy where there is right value.
Fair
So
enough. Yeah.
that's basically where it comes down to. So our salesperson focus on slightly higher accounts, and I just go make sure, as I mentioned, my goal is to only get feedback and make sure they're there. And with that being the goal, I accomplished through a tool like a Phantom Buster. Salesperson accomplishes through Apollo itself. Yeah.
Got it. And I think you also have a dedicated person working on Boomerang leads from a
Yes.
SDR/sales standpoint, right? So I think that's also I must say great, great champion. Like appreciate the partnership there. So yeah, like
Sure.
what's the strategy behind that? Like what was the like? Is that intentional or?
Yes, it is intentional because I think we do a lot of initiatives and it's very easy to get dropped off. And then to be serious around it, I think we wanted to make sure like these are, to me, they are like, we look at a lot of signals, right? People who, like, for example, I'll just tell you the signals that we look at. So we look at signals, people who visits our websites, and then we look at people who visit our high intent pages, who viewed our own demos, who viewed
Yeah.
G2s. Now, job changes is also another signal, right? For us, like a lot of signals come in and we have some idea of like what kind of campaigns and things we have to do for every signal. For job change, we have its own set of actions to do based on this signal. So a person needs to involve. So on our side, like we need to make sure, like our SDR team, we have two people on the SDR side. So making sure that each one is acting on these signals in the right way. So putting a person is very important because these things are like nurtured over time, and it's not something that you do one off, right? So for example, we have thousands of job changes that have happened, and we have identified those leads. Then, as I said, it's not one time, it's over the next 3 to 4 months you have to nurture. So having someone owning that makes a very big difference there. So, and honestly, initially we thought it could be automated, so we were wrong. And I think you guys have told us like having the person is important to us, and I highly recommend doing this over a 3 to 4 month period, clearly with these job changes, and nurturing it is important. So that's what our approach is now, having someone owning it
So
clearly.
makes sense. Makes sense. And I think this is super helpful because I guess, like I said, like especially if you're in that early phase, early stage of growth, you have too many things, and even the small BDR team that you have tends to be fairly
Yeah.
overwhelmed with a lot of things, right? So I think it's good to kind of separate and kind of focus on. So Nalin, I know when we spoke, you also spoke about your perspective on attribution, and you briefly touched about soft touch this thing out, right? Like I know there are
Yeah.
different ways to look at champion tracking and boomerang, and like how you look at attribution. I think that's a lot of depth of what you're thinking, and would love to understand and share it with the rest of the audience too.
Yes, and I think I love that conversation on attribution, because a lot of times when we start looking at it, like my thesis is like we start looking for direct attribution. Hey, did they click on this meeting link and they booked it, right?
Yeah,
Or did they click on the email that you sent out? But I'm a big believer in today's B2B buying. There's a lot of indirect attribution that happens. Like I don't buy from a link, somebody get me an email. Yes, you will get few, but there is a lot of indirect attribution happens. Buyers today just don't go based on the email that you sent out, right? They look at your brand, go to your website, they see your products, they see your demo of your product,
yeah,
and they go to your G2. There's a lot of touch points that happen. So and it's very hard to identify exactly what converted. Yes, you can collect all the data inside like your tools that you're using.
yeah,
Did they view your LinkedIn ad? Did they come to your website? Did they see your emails? And all that will be there. So I'm a big believer of a lot of indirect attribution that happens. But that's what I mean by indirect attribution, because buyers go through different places. So for job change signals specifically, I don't intend them to like talk to my SDR and come through that, because they're a user of Storylane. They have been a customer of Storylane. They know the ins and outs of the product. They know how to get in touch. Not necessarily they will come through the SDR. They will go talk to the AE that they spoke before, or they will respond to me and LinkedIn message and get connected and they sign up itself. There's a lot of indirect attribution that happens to them as well. So I look for data points from indirect attribution mainly, right? Hey, so many people we sent out in emails around like thousands of leads. How many of them over the next 6 months turned into a customer? And that's basically it. It's not a boomerang played a role in terms of job change sequence is one of the signals, and your website is also very important equally. What you're nurturing and your brand is
yeah.
also equally important. Everything needs to play together. So for me, this is one of the signals, and I look at the indirect attribution as overall, like all the things that we're doing, all signals put together, and what is it contributing towards it. So that's how we look at it, and we've got great results for people who change jobs. We touch them, right? They become like, surprisingly, when we reach out, they're already become a customer of Store, and that has happened quite a bit of times.
Yeah.
Like because after a month we come in, and then they're already become a customer already in a qualified pipeline already. So which is a good sign, which means we are in the right direction too for us always.
100%. And I think it also kind of adds up, right? So to your point, you see, at least from your perspective, you look at buyers and users separately. Especially for users, you want to make sure that you're not pushy, but at the same time in touch with them. Rather
Yeah.
in front of them, rather as they move job, and intent also plays a role, right? Like both their personal intent in their new job as well as this organizational intent. So the idea that it's not just only about the meetings, they're very important. Obviously, how many meetings directly come
Yeah.
out of these campaigns, but also the idea that these soft touches and nurture across a period of time is making them relevant. Like the way you put it to me the other day was that, hey, when they want to buy something or when their company is thinking of buying a demo automation tool, the first thing they should think about is Storylane, and like they
Yeah.
should know because they've seen about Storylane yesterday because it came on a LinkedIn feed, or So I think that whole way of looking at it is also very kind of adding to the regular way of looking at things, right? So
100%. And especially if they've used Storyline before and they change the job, they need to be thinking about you when the company's ready to. And also,
yeah,
we are in a category which is new, demo automation category itself. It's been like 5 years maximum, or I would say. There's a lot of greenfield opportunity in this space. So when they go to a new company, they've never used demo automation. And when somebody in the company is bringing up like, hey, I need to procure something, we need to enable few people in that organization and thinking top of the mind. And that could be like following your LinkedIn page of what your company is doing, following your brand. And they've received emails, they've received a touch point from the CEO, founder of the company. So you need multiple touch points. That's what I mean by indirect.
Got
And
it.
they will turn into your customer. And of course, at
Makes
the end of the day, your product needs to do the justice. Yeah,
Absolutely,
irrespective of
absolutely.
what you do.
Yeah, and Alan, you spoke about results, right? Like maybe for like I said, there are a bunch of people who are looking to understand a bit more about,
Mhm.
what's some of these meetings and customers, right? Would you mind sharing a bit more about some of the results and outcomes as well?
Yeah, for sure. So I think from our last, some of the implementations that I'm just pulling some of the data that our team shared with me. So I can say like at least like close to like 10 different accounts we received, which are like opportunity or customers. I think it looks like it's probably like 15, maybe. Yeah. So close to 15 in our, who are in our opportunity or customer list, right? Through attributions coming from Boomerang through our emails and who have changed the jobs or directly responded to it, which is fantastic. And again, these are direct. Again, I call them direct, right? And there's
Yeah,
a lot of indirect, which we don't know, right? And indirect is always very harder because they came and signed up or talked to us or booked a meeting. And because when I say indirect, it's also this, right? So direct is what we are measuring 15. Maybe a colleague of them who never tried Storylane
yeah,
from their company changed the job and now signed up for Storylane today, right? Because they heard in their previous company their colleague used Storylane, right? That's indirect. You just can't measure that, right, easily.
yeah.
So there is a lot of indirect attribution, which I'm a big believer in. So directly, I would say there are like close to 15 or 16 are there, which are like in our pipeline or become a customer already. And then there's a lot of indirect attribution also we can see there. Yeah. So one of the things we are doing for indirect attribution is like, I think we spoke about it, Sham, is like identifying all the ICPs within those organizations and who might have, had an impact or seen Storylane. The nature of a product also means like there's a collaborative part of it. They share these demos. So anybody within the ICP who's changed their jobs also, we want to reach out to them. So hopefully we're able to catch more of indirect ones that way.
Makes sense. Makes sense now. I think I guess before the last question I had, like from my prepared, and I know I have a bunch of things that has come in both here at the chat and like outside,
Okay.
which is yeah. So which is that if you were to look at like other companies that are in that Series A, B stage, and then if you're a CEO or a CRO of such a company and looking to invest into champion tracking as a source of high value pipeline, and especially like you said, combining not just the direct BDR aspect as well as a bit of marketing and nurture, right? So what would be like taking inspiration from your own journey, right? Like what would be your recommendation slash like guidance to somebody like that?
So I think I mentioned this a little earlier as well. The B2B buying landscape changing quite a fast, right? So which means
Yeah,
buyers don't come with a single point of view. When there is a signal like this out there, why wouldn't you use it? Right? It's simple like that, right? And then it's very simple. You need more. I mean, one is getting the signals is important. Then, according to your product, according to the your team size, the team's capabilities, plus where you are in your journey, you need to come up with an action plan. It's not like take this action plan, apply it everywhere. Of course, your action plan will involve LinkedIn, you'll involve emails and touch points. But the point is, there are lots of signals out there, and collect the signals, orchestrate those signals, identify which signals to act on. So, starting to do this earlier is much better. I mean, of course, this makes definitely a sense like when you have a product, you have customers and everything,
yeah,
and then you're going there. Irrespective of PLG and non PLG, your strategies will change a little bit, but you need to do that. And these are signals that are very valuable. And then you've built a great product, customers like it, you are rated very high, you need to tap into the opportunity that's there. To me, it's like money on the table, you're losing it, right? You're not taking the money that's on the table. So you need to do that. Yeah.
yeah. No, super helpful. I think this is really good insights, and I think I'm sure a lot of the people who are attending here would have some really good takeaways from here, right? So, probably we have time for like two or three questions, Nalin, right?
Sure.
So we'll start with something that just come through here, just to kick it off, right? So when someone leaves a job, your champion, for example, left an
Mhm.
account, like what do you do today to like prevent churn or like de-risk churn in the previous account? Like let's say, like do you have a systematic approach in place today, or how do you think about that?
Great question. I was talking a couple of weeks with the CS team about this as well. So we do not have a great system in place today on that. Hopefully, we are able to leverage like Boomerang for that as well to identify the champions and identify job changes. We only focus on new opportunities, not for existing customers' job changes within them, right?
Got it.
So
Yeah.
that is something that we haven't leveraged. We get updated typically from us to a CS team, and they telling us. So we are not being proactive about it. So there are a few more areas. I mean, I would take turn that question more into like there are a few areas where we're thinking of using it. One is
Mhm.
this, definitely on the CS side, and then the second is account-based expansion also, because
Yeah.
somebody within those jobs have changed or anything, opportunity to get new accounts or any new jobs added to them, so that we are able to focus on expansion opportunities. There are two things we haven't leveraged. Hopefully, end of this year and early next year, we'll start leveraging those.
Totally makes sense. No, I think that's absolutely there. I think some other things. I don't know if you are so big into that. I don't think Storyline is so big, but then companies have communities, or like these kind of other like marketing database kind of things also, like which kind of eventually gets plugged into this. So yeah, that's really good kind of secondary use cases that we see with a lot of our other customers. So
Yeah.
that's interesting. Uh, Wonderful. I think a couple of others that I have here are. Yeah, I think you answered this. Sorry, the question was, I'm just reading through this, right? So are Boomerang's leads ready to evaluate a new tool as they change jobs, right? How long does it take for them to typically, get into the seat and and consider a new tool? Yeah. So I think you did
So
briefly
it
touch
depends
upon that.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I briefly touched on it. It really depends on the contact, the person. It really depends on the no, your product. Plus, apart from that, like which company they go on, what their need is, right?
Yeah.
Look, I think if the team that they've joined, I mean, here is one example of a call that I did last week, and then this was a company, and then the champion changed the jobs, and then they were not looking for a tool. Within 2 weeks, they wanted to come into the job and bring in some set of tools because they found like a lot of gaps there. They immediately heard a team of their boss, the VP, and everything, and got on a call to showcase. And this is what her point: like, hey, I know student, I'm a great, I love the product, but can you get on a call and educate everybody around it? So this was within 2 weeks after they changed the jobs, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying they're going to purchase the tool, but what she wants to use student is to educate her, to help her be the champion, educate their organization of things that they're missing out. So typically, it might take a couple of months or 3 months around these things because the whole org is not ready yet. But we already have a champion who's pushing this ahead, right? So it really depends on some places. They're already a decision maker. They purchase it within a month. Depends on where the maturity of the organization is and what level they have invested into it, the budget and everything. So we have seen anywhere within the first 3 months happening for our product after they've
Got it.
changed jobs very
Makes
easily.
sense. Makes sense. And I guess it's also, like you said, it's also a matter of, like your product and the persona.
Yeah.
Like, for example, if you're like this most important, critical to success kind of tool, as in your case it is, like, if you think about some of those personas that you sell to, it's like a very important, like, I need this to kind of be successful kind of a tool. So that obviously then, makes them a strong champion. So a couple more coming here. And I hope we can like probably have
Yeah. Yeah.
some more going. Yeah. So I have a question here which says, so job change based nurturing, like the one that you mentioned, right? So what's the right size of customers, when like what's too early and what's the right size for an early stage startup to start thinking about something like this?
Great question. So we do have a large volume of customers, and I think from my perspective, I think you should start looking. At least you should have like few hundreds, right? It would help you. And then we are looking at so that there's a good data point that you're getting. Few hundred should definitely be there in my head. And then I would turn that you guys are the know this
Yeah.
best as well from Boomerang side. We work with some of the customers. Like you can take that up and answer what would be best for us. It is like in thousands, right? So there's a volume game to it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I guess we also look at this as more from a number of contacts versus the customer side. So I think there are companies
Yeah.
that we have who have much smaller number of customers, not thousands, probably like like hundreds. But then each of their customers are sizable. So every account has, I don't know, anywhere from 10 to 20 people that are involved. So essentially, the multiplication kind of comes down to a similar number, right? So I think that's at least one thing that you've seen, right?
Yeah.
Okay, we have another which is more
Sure.
specific to this thing, right? So, what challenges have you faced when implementing Boomerang or champion tracking across your organization, and how did you overcome them?
I think I mentioned this, and the main challenge was we didn't have an owner. Right, having an owner is very important initially, and I think Sham knows that too. So we didn't have an owner initially, and now we have an owner. All the signals have to have an owner. And it is basically because we thought, hey, they were a customer of us, and they've used the product. Maybe an automation itself will do. No, actually, there is some nurturing, some bookkeeping to be done. And that was a challenge initially. We didn't have an owner properly doing these things and changing your sequencing, how you want to. I mean, every signal that you act on, there's some nurturing you do, and you need to do some A/B testing. Right, you always need to have an owner making sure they're accountable, and it's part of their one of
Yeah,
the things that they're doing in the job. We overcome that. We just assigned a SDR to it, and then now we're
yeah,
making sure like we have an owner, and that's taken care as well. Yeah.
yeah. No, 100%. I think that's very common, especially that's one of those biggest challenges of people, right? I mean, not having enough people to kind of run on multiple projects is obviously a standard, challenge with. But I think that's where I think some of the things that you did was remarkably smart. Like, for example, having that LinkedIn automation. So even while you're, kind of figuring out some of the other things, some of these like the users or the champions that are leaving are continuing to kind of get nurtured through a, different model, right? So that makes sense. From your perspective, how does champion tracking help you go up market, close higher ACV deals? Uh, yeah,
How champion tracking helps you go up market? Um, well, I think from my perspective, it gets you net new. Like there are two things, right? One is when the champion who's been a customer of Storylane changed the jobs, and it depends on the organization they're going into, right? So they've
yeah,
already been a champion. Again, like you have a startup who purchased the product, now they're gone into a bigger organization. Do the champion tracking. From a small deal, you can very well be 10x tomorrow because you're already a champion.
yeah,
No customer is smaller, right? When you're starting to work to enable them successfully, because of this job change, the tracking that we're doing, they go into a bigger organization. They've been a great champion, even in the startup, but now they're in a bigger organization. Now you have a potential of this one to become a 10x ACV deal tomorrow, right?
yeah,
So point being is not to ignore it because they're smaller today, but tomorrow because of the job change, they're all going to
yeah.
change the jobs, and it can be potentially 10x higher. So I have seen that work very well. And so I would highly recommend not to discard the low ones like that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think, yeah, 100%. I think what we've also seen, just to add to that, right, is that there are two motions, right? So you have your account-based marketing or enterprise motion, or somewhat mid-market motion for that matter, right? Where you have outbound and all that. I think when somebody, like you had mentioned in the previous, like for expansions and also for landing some of
Yeah,
those larger companies, having a voice inside the room, and that cannot be better than anybody who's already used your product or has been a previous buyer, even in a smaller company, right? I think goes a long way. I think, at least
I agree.
that's been a common trend, that we've seen. Um, Job change is a relatively much untapped signal. What other signals do you have? I think you mentioned this actually, the website, you
Yeah.
mentioned G2,
Yeah,
what
few
else?
signals we use quite a lot is like exactly. So G2 and then people who viewed our demos. We
Yeah,
have Storyline product demos on websites. We have demos on our documentation pages and everywhere. So anybody who engages in demos like on our documentation pages is like serious intent. Somebody engages demos on our website solution pages, good intent. And job changes, G2. People who visits our website spends a lot of time,
yeah,
multiple visits, good intent, and visits a pricing page, good intent. So we use a bunch of these intent signals like that, and then try to have different action plans for them. Yeah,
yeah. I think super helpful. I guess that's at the end of the questions we have. And I don't know, I know we are a little over a few minutes beyond the 30-minute mark as well. Nalin, once again, thank you
sure.
so much for joining. This was, I think, super helpful, super informative, and always a pleasure to have you on a conversation like this. And thank you for being our customer.
Awesome. Absolutely. Pleasure was mine too. Thanks. Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you very much. Thanks everyone for joining. Until the next time. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye bye.